When I think about Wall Street, it's hard not to think about the way it's portrayed by people like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street, Eddie Murphy in Trading Places, or Don Cheadle in Black Monday. Today's guest is going to give us the real insight of what it's like to grow a financial firm. On the Knight's Tale podcast, it's so crucial that we think about the process of what it takes to reach greatness in our craft, and that's heavily based on mindset. Mindset has proven to be like the guiding light of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. Today, one of those entrepreneurs is sharing his story about how he built one of the fastest growing financial technology firms in the country. In this episode, he really breaks down the sacrifices that were required for him to build a financial empire. The cool thing is that it seems like he's just getting started. I'm really excited to share the inspirational conversation that I had with the CEO of Streetshares, Mark Rockefeller.
So I did ROTC at the University of Colorado in Boulder. So I was born and raised in Colorado, born in Colorado Springs, to a middle-class family there. Despite my last name, folks get confused sometimes. But I'm a middle-class kid, so I've got to work hard for my money. There's no trust fund here. Went to school in Boulder, paid for with an ROTC scholarship, and just had a great time there. Met some wonderful people, and you've experienced this. Anytime there's like a group of like military folks together, folks that are aspiring to be in the military, there's something magical that happens just in terms of like the bonds that are forged. So I was a business major, was a walk on the football team there,
nice.
So was exempt, thankfully, from some of my PT on the military side because of football, so that was nice. But I was a true walk-on. I kind of describe my experience in college football as being like the movie Rudy, without the glorious ending. That was sort of pretty much my experience. But did that for a couple of years. Did ROTC, commissioned. And then for some odd reason, I got assigned to mostly bases that begin with the letter B. I don't know why this is. I'm not sure what the algorithm at the Pentagon was. But I started off at Brooks Air Force Base in San Antonio. I was there for a couple of years. Then actually came back to Colorado for a grad degree program. And then got sent to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. And then Baghdad. And then back to Colorado for Buckley Air Force Base,
Nice.
And that was my last base. So in all, did 9 years, principally as a JAG lawyer, and mostly on the prosecution side. So I was a JAG lawyer, prosecutor, international law advisor, some other things. Certainly my time in Iraq was the most interesting time that I had. Did a very brief stint at the Pentagon, and then got out in 2011, and then moved to New York City and did the Columbia thing, as you mentioned.
That's awesome. So during your transition, what was your mindset like? Were you excited? Were you happy when you got out, or what was that like for you?
I think like a lot of veterans, you're excited for the future, but
Right.
there's a lot of uncertainty. And for better or for worse, when you're in the military, it is a bit of a crutch, right? It's a bit of a cocoon because like that BAH will come, that BAS will come,
Yep.
Healthcare is covered, right? And so anytime you leave those things behind, there's a risk. There's a risk. In our case too, we were picking up my family and moving to New York City, which was a big adventure for us. We had a couple of young kids and all that.
Oh, wow.
And so moving living in the city for the first time with young kids, all of that was an adventure. We had PCS multiple times, as most folks in the military had. So we're certainly used to, picking up and moving on a dime.
Yep.
And so, I'd say I was excited, I was confident, but there was that little bit of sort of apprehension around the unknown. And I imagine that a lot of folks, when they transition, feel those emotions. Right.
So when it came to Streetshares, how did Streetshares come into the picture? Was that something that you practiced during your program in Columbia?
Not really. No, I out of Columbia went to work at the Washington D.C. office of a Wall Street law firm called Milbank, Tweed, Hadley, McCloy, and it's kind of a white shoe Wall Street law firm. And it's banks, it's hedge funds, it's that kind of stuff. And when I was in the military, I felt like I was doing good in the world, right? Like I authentically felt like I was, kind of the white hatted person doing, doing positive, good things in the world.
Right.
But the pay is so-so, right? And then when I was doing the Wall Street law firm thing, the pay was really good, but I didn't feel like I was doing any good in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we like represent like, one hedge fund who's like fighting with another hedge fund over some pool of money.
Right.
And you do well by your client, you do the best work that you can. It was a very, very good law firm, extremely smart lawyers. But there's a social impact side to it that I felt in the military that I didn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to sort of do good, do well. It's one of my, one of my sayings, one of my hashtags, right? Do good, do well. Meaning, yes, I want to make a good living. Obviously, everyone does, but I want to do it in a way that, positively impacts the world. And I felt like I wasn't doing that, there.
Mm. So,
I've always been entrepreneurial. Like I've always been sort of like starting things on the side and like, little side hustles and whatever. Met my co-founder in February of 2013, and he and I met at a Bob Evans restaurant, which is like a Denny's basically, right? Here in Northern Virginia, in Oakton, Virginia. And we met and just began to sort of, kick around some ideas. And I'm sure you've experienced this where it's like, you're like on the same, wavelength as someone. And it's just like, there's an energy and excitement that comes to ideation. That's just it's a lot of fun. And so we realized, my goodness, we're gonna, we have to go do this. And the idea was, changed and shaped over time. We would call a lot of very, very smart people, advisors, and be like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think?
Right.
And it was several months where it sort of evolved. And then we got to the point and we're like, let's do this. And so, I left my job, he left his. And this was true entrepreneurship. Like this was risky stuff, right? We both have like, nice homes in Northern Virginia and big mortgages and all that. Families, exactly.
Yeah.
Both of our wives, incidentally, are mostly stay-at-home moms.
Oh man.
We both have like multiple kids. So like we're the sole breadwinners, man.
Right.
And you leave a well-paying, comfortable job and launch out to start something literally in my basement for the first year and a half, right? That's scary stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's scary stuff. But my wife was adventurous. We had done the military moves before, so she's like, honey, I'm with you. Let's do it. Let's do it. And so we did. And so one of the stories that I tell sometimes is we actually went like a couple of nights actually before I actually left my law firm job, and we put out some applications online for credit cards, and we must have taken out $150,000, $200,000 worth of credit card borrowing capacity.
Oh man!
Because I had a good salary from the law firm, so I would qualify for that.
Right.
My credit score was still good, right? Right. It wasn't going to be forever as an entrepreneur, right? And so I wanted that sort of borrowing capacity to have as a bit of a a bit of a crutch, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll tell you, we used almost every dollar of that. Almost every dollar of that. So
Nice.
This was true high risk. If this doesn't work out, we got to sell the house and move the kids out of their school type risk that we took. So it was a real deal. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. So there's so much to unpack there. So I'll do this first. If we rewind back to when you joined the law firm, you mentioned being from like a middle class family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How did it feel to talk about millions and billions of dollars? Was that a mindset shift for you when you got to that stage in your career?
It was a little bit, yeah. I had gotten a little bit of that in the military. I think anyone who comes from like a middle class family and then their job in the military involves them managing, millions of dollars, that's usually a shift, right? And a lot of us in the military, the first time that we've dealt with millions of anything, is on active duty, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're sort of, like doing contracts and that kind of stuff. You're kind of like around, those things a little bit. And then at the law firm, I mean, it was a whole other, level, right? And a caliber of people. I mean, they're just extremely smart people, and your clients are very sophisticated. I mean, it's it's the real deal. So.
That's amazing. So when you talk about that fear, when you're making that transition, a lot of people say fear is false events appearing real. And I think you're one of those people that, just made it work. And of course you had, well, fortunately you had your wife who's standing right by your side,
Yeah.
Holding it down, as we say.
Yeah.
When you were going through that transition, what are some of the things you were thinking, or on a daily basis? What were you doing on a daily basis to make sure that this dream actually worked?
So, had this mentor in college, kind of a spiritual mentor,
Mm-hmm.
and he had this saying that you should, pray like it all depends on God and work like it all depends on you, right? And I've always liked that, right?
Yeah,
That
that's amazing. I love that.
God will bless what you do, but you can't sit on the couch.
Of course.
You got to go to work. Got to go to
Yeah.
work. And hard work has never been, an issue for me. I'm just sort of, some folks are just like wired to just grind and crank, and I'm one of them, right? You are too. A lot of entrepreneurs are, right? But this was like hard work with a huge risk.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the military, we all work hard because it's the right thing to do,
Right.
and there's a mission to get done.
Right.
In this case, if this didn't work, I mean, my kids are now in trouble. How do I feed them? What do I do, right?
Right.
And so the stakes of it went up quite a bit, and that was very clarifying. That bumps up against it. So like the incentive, the stakes are high. It's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is, as a brand new entrepreneur, you don't know exactly what to do, right?
Yeah. Right.
So you're, starting some new venture. You've got a plan. There's market research. You're hiring employees. You're, talking to customers, whatever it is. None of us really knows what to do until you've done it, right? It's why second and third time entrepreneurs usually have their big wins in their second and third ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you make every mistake in your first one, right? We've made some mistakes, not the big ones, thankfully. Mostly because my co-founder and I were just very good with our communication.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant guy, and so together we just found our way. But
Crushed it.
Day in, day out, begin your morning with perspective, which for me comes from sort of prayer, meditation, contemplation, just like understand your place in the world.
Right.
And, there is a God, and I'm not him, right? I kind of start with that every day. And then because we didn't exactly know what to do at every step along the way, I had a very good team of advisors and mentors who would sort of coach me through, right? I call it sort of your own personal board of directors.
Yeah.
If you treat yourself like the startup, Robert Woods is a startup, Mark Rockefeller is the startup. All right, who's your board of advisors?
Right.
And so I've got a team of advisors that I go to for different things. Hand-selected, very, very experienced, top-notch people that will advise me on certain things. And so, between them providing some guidance and a really good co-founder to sort of work through it together, we got it done.
That's amazing. So, and I love the fact that you mentioned your co-founder a couple times. How important was it for you to have him by your side as well?
Essential.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a certain skill set. He had a certain skill set. We overlapped a little bit. And we understood each other's language, right?
Yeah.
We both understood finance, both understood, the law. But he has some extraordinary strength that, I don't have. And there's some things that I do. And so, it was it's something that could not have been done, I think, with one person. There's no way.
Yeah.
And by the way, finding a co-founder is like finding a spouse. No kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, right? It's that important. You're about to go down a mutual goal together. Your success will depend on each other. Your lives are now legally and financially intertwined. It is just like a marriage. And so, honestly, that kind of thought and vetting went into it. I mean, it was it was a pretty serious thing. It wasn't that we just decided one day. I mean, it was we actually treated it a bit like dating. It was kind of funny. We met and clicked, and actually both called our wives, and we're like, I think I found my co-founder. And then we started this process of getting them together. The four of us would go out and have dinners and whatever. I mean, it was sort of like a meet the parents sort of thing where you
That's so nice.
where you have to build trust over time.
Right. Of course.
And that took a few months to do. So
that's awesome. So when it comes to this journey here, how did it work for the first couple clients that you had? What was that picture like?
Yeah. So There's a model from a guy named Eric Ries, the lean startup model, right? There's a great book out there about it. And it's basically that you want to like talk to 100 people, show them your initial prototype or your widget, get their feedback, talk to 100 more, right? That it's all about sort of getting out there to the customers first.
Right.
We did a good bit of that, but probably not enough, right? So like a lesson, if I could do it over again, would have been to talk to more people earlier on. I think we felt like we had a vision of something that we wanted to do. That thing had never been done. And so we felt like we just kind of have to do it and get out there. No one's going to quite understand it until they get to, get to see it.
Right.
Our first 12 like test financings that we did were literally $100 loans to people that we knew. So that way, if we screwed it up, we could just like give them $100 and make it right, right?
Right.
And it took that to sort of get people in, testing our system, making sure that all of our tech worked and all of that. And then one day you're like, all right, let's go public. Trading wheels off, pilots over.
Right.
And you get out there and you do it, and then you sort of turn on the machine and you all sit there and watch, and customers begin to trickle in, begins to happen. It's pretty exciting.
That's amazing. So when you talk about your customers, are they typically new entrepreneurs or people that are experienced and have a few wins under their belt?
So they're typically folks that have been in business for at least a year.
Okay.
And they've got some cash flows going, right? So we do small business loans. Our initial focus was on the military veteran market. That is still the heart and soul of who we are. I think about 80% of our loans have been to military veterans, and a lot of the sort of balance of 20% has been to spouses. So that's still sort of the heart and soul of who we are. We're now taking our technology and letting banks use it so that they can sort of do what we do now as well. And so it's, that's sort of expanding a bit outside the veteran market, but our heart and soul is still there. And, for me, it was a population of folks that I really cared about. But we've got to sort of balance that risk with, we've got to make good investments, right? And brand new startup companies are just highly, highly risky, right?
Right.
And so what we do is you've got to have a minimum of 1 year in business. And then, we can typically work with you. If you're a government contractor with contracts, we can sort of waive that element of it, but it's typically 1 year in business with some revenue and cash flows coming in.
Nice. And so when it comes to your day-to-day now, where you are, how does it feel to actually live the dream that you thought of a long time ago?
I don't feel like I'm living the dream, right? Because it's just, it's a hustle and a grind every single day. And it still is, right?
Yeah.
I think at some point we'll get there where it's not, and you can sort of like, we're not there, right? We're still very, very much in the hustle, in the grind. What's fascinating is like how different, we started in my basement with 7 people,
right?
Okay? Like literally in my basement, right? Being a part of a team that size, that informal has one dynamic to it. We now have over 50 in, an office here that you saw. It's pretty nice, right?
Yeah. And
there's been 3 or 4 steps in between. And so a 7-member team in your basement has a totally different sort of character and nature than a 15-member team in a crummy office, than a 30-member team in a crummy office, and then a 50-member team in a nice office. They're all just very different. And so it's been like one massive learning experience for me. I don't feel yet that we've arrived at, I don't feel like we're done. I still feel very, very much like we're just in the middle of the grind. And, it's the exact same thing that you do. You get up every day and you hustle and you take care of people and you provide value and you do the very best that you can. And you keep doing that for a while. Right. And it's harder than you expect. It takes longer than you expect, right? But that's the game. That's the game.
Right. So when it comes to the execution of your goals, because if this was one of your goals, how do you start your day? You said you started with introspection first, and then do you have a task list, and like how does it work? How do you do it?
Yeah, I will typically try the night before to lay out very clearly what are the key things that you got to do the next day. And people have different models for this, right? There's the rock model. You do your big rocks first. There's one that we use here called WIGS, Wildly Important Goals. It's a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And it's, you like focus on your main goals, and then if your goals are the product or the output of a system, you focus on the inputs, right? Like if my goal is to sell, whatever, $100,000 of widgets this month, in order to get that, I've got to make this many sales calls. So I don't worry about the outcome. The output, I focus on the input, because that's a lot of meetings, a lot of calls, managing a board, that kind of thing. So I'd say that I spend, there's usually, call it 2 or 3 deliverables from me each day out to the team, meaning a report, a deck, a document that I'm drafting, an analysis, whatever it is, that are things where, just like you, I'm like down at a computer, heads down for a couple hours, cranking something out.
Right.
I'll have a couple of those, but a lot of my day at this point is coordinating meetings, being on the phone, leadership meetings with our executive team, that kind of thing.
That's amazing.
But I'm still very much a coach, player coach at this level too.
That's awesome. So, I think there might be somebody sitting in the dorm right now that's thinking, man, I think I could do something like this. What would you say to them in terms of mapping out their goals and trying to figure out how to actually get to the next level?
Yeah. You have to start, right? You have to start. Like, you've got to take your passion and add some activity to it. I actually get annoyed in sort of the entrepreneurship circles, because it's all about passion, right? Passion this, passion that. Like, lots of folks have passion and they don't do anything with it, right? There are folks, at home right now on their couch, binging Netflix or playing video games or whatever with passion, but they're not doing anything with it, right? You have to add activity to your passion, right? So, passion by itself is worth nothing.
Yeah.
Passion plus activity. All right, now you got something. Passion plus activity plus strategy plus time, you got a business, right? So that's what takes you from being like a entrepreneur to an entrepreneur. And that's the hard part, frankly, right? Anyone can be passionate about stuff like that. That's easy. Anyone can talk a big game. That's easy.
Yeah.
It's the disciplined, organized, like planning your day, figuring out what those things are that you got to execute on, and then getting up every day and doing it. That's the hard part. And that's where, a lot of folks run around and say they're entrepreneurs or they want to be or whatever, until you're like executing, that's the hard part, right? You're executing every single day with your podcast, right? I'm executing here.
Yeah.
You've got to add activity to your passion to have it be worth anything.
Of course. Well, those are wise words spoken from a hardworking man that has to go.
Yeah, you too, Robert. You too.
I appreciate it. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being on this podcast. And do you have any final words for anybody listening?
For your veterans who are out there who are thinking about starting something, right? For me, I waited until the risk of inaction became too great. Right. That is, I was 36, I think, when I left to start this with my co-founder. And, was at a point where I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm not going to do it. I've always wanted to start a company. Now's my chance. Right. I would suggest that folks do it as early as possible. Right. And as often as possible. Right. And be prepared to fail, to fall down, and just get back up and try it again. We're succeeding on our first startup. That's an amazing thing. Most folks don't.
Right.
And so get your first failure out of the way, and your first one may be something really small, and that's perfectly fine. You learn things. So I would not hesitate to start. Take that passion, add activity to it, add a plan, add a strategy, add time, right? There's no substitute for that. But you got to get off the couch and get off Netflix and do the hard work that it actually takes, right?
Of course. Well, Mark Rockefeller, thank you again for being on the Nice Tale podcast. Hope you have a good day.
Thanks, Robert. I've enjoyed it. Take care.
You too.